All right, we're doing eyes today. The point of what we're doing in class is going to be leading up to us having so many different variations of items for a character that we can build out a custom character as easy as we want. And we're going to start with eyes. We'll work on noses, mouths. We're going to work on the shape of the body, different hairstyles, even the ears, the hands, the feet, the whole thing. And the reason we're going to do all that and do these different styles and variations is because then we can create characters however we want, whenever we want, which is really an asset when it comes to being able to draw. You don't want to be able to be stuck on one particular way of drawing. So we're going to start with what I call vintage eyes, which be like what you're seeing really popular right now are these vintage characters. A lot of businesses and people are using them. And for the most part, the vintage eye is a shape with another shape cut out of it that kind of makes the pupil. And so this is what we worked on in class today. Something like you would have an oval, and then you would have a triangle cut out. Again, I'm not doing this perfect, but that's kind of the general idea. And one thing I want to mention to you guys too is we're not going for perfection here by any means. Practice, and these things become a lot more natural to you. But we're not trying to make things look perfect. Now, when we get on to drawing our characters and fine tuning, it's great because if we're drawing with pencil, we can go back easily and adjust and do different things. There's never been a time in my life where I've drawn something that was perfect the first time. Never, not one time. And so that would be a good instance too to also remember that we're not bearing down super hard on the paper when we're drawing with pencil and paper. The harder we draw down, obviously, the more permanent feel, not only in the lead that's coming out, but the indentation in the paper. It makes it a lot more difficult to erase mistakes when we're bearing down like that. And I'm really bad about that, so I have to constantly remind myself. So again, back to the vintage eyes. The vintage eyes are, again, a shape where the shape, with a shape cut out of it. So even if we kind of did something with a little cheek, and we're going to draw these here in just a second on the other end, but here are our main parts of the eye. But if I came down, and this part right here would be colored in, right? This would be kind of the pupil. And so you can kind of see how easy that is. Now, you could do some more difficult versions where maybe, and this is why we practice those shapes and why we practice drawing things the same size, so that we can get kind of a better flow on how we draw these things each time. Okay, so here, just drawing some vintage eyes. And depending on where that cutout is, kind of shows you where they're looking, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in this category down here. But you can also do this with circles. So if we were to make, here are our eyes. If we were to go in here, we could make a circle. And again, we're going to color that spot in. And a lot of this really just comes back down to taking your time and working through it. So again, if I was to draw a nose on any of these, you've probably, again, seen characters like this before, where it's kind of a... All right, so there are vintage eyes. And again, really the main idea of this is you can take any shape. I've even seen eyes that look like that. All right, again, kind of do it with any shape, and you've got that vintage eye look. All right, now we're going to work on how the eyebrow or the cheek can totally change the emotion of a character. And I think this is probably one of the bigger parts, because sometimes, I know when I was certainly starting out drawing, I didn't have really an idea of how to change the way a character felt. And I don't even know if I knew that that was such a big deal. There's super easy ways to change the way a character looks and feels based on really just their eyes. And so a good one to start out with is the check mark. I call it the check mark, and it's literally just 2 check marks. And again, you can see that I'm not taking my real time on this. I'm really kind of walking through it. But I'm going to come halfway through and just connect that oval there. And there you've already got a mean set of eyes. I even told the kids earlier, you can kind of draw 2 little lines there. It's interesting if you put these little tick mark lines, really does give the sense of intensity, maybe even of anger. Let's try another one. Let's try one with the cheek. Here are the cheeks. We did this one a second ago over here, but we can do the same thing. We can do with a different type. We can kind of make it to where they're looking over here. So that kind of like a, I don't know, maybe almost like a mischievous kind of look to it. You can even see it there a little bit. And we're just changing, really, again, simple shapes, simple lines that will dynamically change the way a character can look. Here, let's do one. This one kind of looking like maybe disinterested. Really care, a little apathetic eyes. And then of course, if we wanted to make them sad, or maybe even a little bit fearful looking. Again, just little changes, subtle changes, change the dynamic of a character's eyes. Now again, these are really simple. We're just talking about some lines and where we're placing those cheek, really is like a cheekbone or a cheek pressed up on the eyelid to give it that sense. And then all the rest of this are these little highlight marks. They're super easy. Again, you don't have to really try that hard. You just kind of outline what you're doing. All right, so that's eyebrows and the cheeks. You can play around with that like crazy. Let's talk about spacing for just a second. I'm gonna draw 3 circles. They'll be my face of the character. And I'm just gonna show, let's get my nose there, little mouth. I like to do this little grin, I don't know why, a little smirk. Jennifer says I smirk all the time, so. All right, let's just talk about how spacing, we're gonna use a simple set of eyes. All right, these are going to be our eyes, and we're just going to talk about here how spacing is going to change the way the character looks. So if we put them to the furthest sides, right, kind of gives a character a certain look as opposed to a character's eyes that would be closer together. You can also, by changing the size of the eyes, even change with simple circles. Definitely looks like this character is looking this way, whereas these characters are looking forward. So even with just simple eyes and spacing, you can change the way a character looks. Super easy. Again, we're not talking about how can we make the most complex characters. We're talking about what can we do with little changes, simple shapes, simple lines to create a dynamic character. And it's pretty easy to do when you just add these little variants to it. And then the last one would be with the pupils. Now, pupils can change everything, and you can already see based on these eyes, but if we want to change direction or we want to show other certain types of activity with the eyes, where the pupil is inside the eye can totally change what an eye looks like. And so, for instance, while we can draw an eye that's like this, now this has up here a very almost sad, fearful look. But if we connect the pupil to the top, look a little bit different. More like a worried, maybe a concerned. But again, that's all just changed based on where the pupil is. And it doesn't always make the biggest difference in the world, but if we were to just take, again, inverting there, the pupil being at the top, we did the same one, just show. It just really looks like he's looking down, versus this one just kind of looks like just a plain no expression type thing. On this one, looks like he's looking down. So the pupil changing, now this one's going to be kind of silly, but it'll still work. So that kind of gives a goofy look, right? If I was to draw some eyebrows that were thicker. So, I mean, we can easily change the pupils around to make different faces look different ways. But the pupil, changing where the pupils are. So, point of this whole exercise, the point of what we're doing and what we did today was we can dynamically change a character with some simple changes. So get your sketchbooks out, sketch these 4 different kinds, and you may just want to take 5 minutes and just sketch nothing but vintage eyes. And what we did earlier was take that notebook, square it up, and draw on one page as many different variations of one type or set of eyes as possible. And when you do that, you get more proficient at it. We're going to get into noses and mouths and ears and all that good stuff over the next week or so. So happy drawing, and we'll see you back in the studio.